Welcome to Introduction to 2D Side-Scroller Games in Unreal Engine. In this clip, we are going to examine a completed sample side-scroller game and identify its basic elements. In subsequent clips, we will create each of those elements. Okay, we've opened up the game demo that we will be building through the duration of this course, and we can see that we're going for sort of an 8-bit retro style here. The main character is in the center of the screen. This is the character we'll be creating throughout the course of the demo. And it's all created from sprites in the Paper 2D system in Unreal Engine. And we also see the environment is created out of sprites as well. It's sort of creating this playable space right here that I'm moving on right now. It's created from just a tile system. And then we also have sort of a backdrop of a ruined cityscape. And it also translates to a middle and a foreground to give it a little bit of a sense of depth here in our environment. All of this art here was created by Stephen Challoner, and I sourced it from the opengameart.org website, and I'm using it under the Creative Commons license. I just wanted to give a notice about that and give proper credit where credit is due. Okay, so when we look at this character, when it's not moving, we can see sprites are being animated with something called a flipbook, which we'll examine later, and it creates this basic idle animation when we're not moving. When the controller gives input to the player character, left and right, moving left and right, it creates a walking animation to give the appearance of walking. When we press the A button, we have a jumping animation. And when we pull the right trigger, we have a shooting animation that can either shoot whenever we pull the trigger, or if we hold it down, it can quickly loop and shoot quickly like that. So we can see I pretty much put together these environmental tiles to create this basic obstacle course for the player to jump and walk on here. And also there's a projectile down below which mimics the one that comes out of my character. And if it hits my character, we have another animation built in, a hit animation that does that whenever you're hit. And we can jump over this if we need to. And here we have a large building created also from tiles that we can jump over and navigate around. Now let's see if I can jump down without dying here. Okay, if I fall down and hit the spikes, I die just like that. Okay, we're going to stop this now. Now we're going to have a look here behind the curtain in the actual game level and see how all of these sprite elements are put together to make the game that we just witnessed. So here we are looking at a front view of the game world. We're looking at the X and Z axes here. The Y isn't really, since there's no depth to the game world, there's no Y axis that really comes into play in this case. So we see our backgrounds and our foregrounds and our sort of playable space that's made from the environment tiles. So first thing I'm going to do is, since we've organized these into separate levels, we put all the foreground and background sprites into the Vista level here. We're just going to hide this so we can have a little better look. And we can see this is where the player character spawned in. And this is the small environment we created for that character to move around in. So these are the sprite tiles we talked about earlier. If we click on these, we can see they are just individual tiles that are put together to snap into position on this 1 pixel wide grid. We have our grid snap set to 1 so we can move these around that way. And each one of these is a separate tile that was originally imported from a PNG file into a sprite sheet and separated out into these separate tiles, almost like Lego blocks, building blocks. These are our damage spike things here. This whole building too is also all sprite tiles. You can just take one out, one at a time, or a group of them, and create your building that way. Okay, so we're going to have a look now at the perspective view. This gives you a little more insight. So you can see that since the camera only views these directly at a Y axis like this, that's how it looks. But in reality, these are flat textures, and they're organized kind of in a 3D space that you can actually, if you really need to for some reason, you could actually move these along the y-axis for 3D space reasons. And that's what we're using here for our vista. Even though this is a 2D side-scroller game, I have to admit there's a small bit of cheating that goes on so we can get the sort of scrolling effect of foreground and background. So if I show this here, you can have a look. You can see how they're actually set at different distances from the camera. And the player camera, by the way, is actually attached to the player character and moves with them as they move through the environment. So you can see even when I do this with the camera here, you get a semi-realistic kind of sense of depth. The actual sense of depth is also created by how much detail you choose to put into these foreground, middle ground, and background sprite sheets. So that's basically how it's set up. Here we have our actor that we created for a turret component. It fires at the player. That was the thing that created the actual hit reaction we saw before. And that's a pretty basic overview of the game demo level that we will be building.